January 1995. A vibrant Texas teacher, gone. A community left with haunting questions. For nearly 3 decades, her murder was a wound that would not heal. But in the shadows of silence, a single clue was waiting. A trace of evidence that only science decades later could unlock. This is the story of Mary Catherine Edwards. Her life, her tragic death, and the journey that turned a cold case into a courtroom verdict. Mary Catherine Edwards was 31 years old, a respected Beaumont elementary school teacher. Her kindness was legendary. Her weekends filled with volunteer work and church activities. On January 13, 1995, she attended a friend's wedding. Those who saw her remembered only warmth and laughter. But when she failed to answer calls the next day, concern grew. Officers found her in her townhouse. She had been sexually assaulted and drowned in her bathtub. Evidence was collected. Fingerprints, fibers, DNA samples. But in the 1990s, testing was primitive compared to today. Investigators had little to work with. Mary Catherine's killer vanished into silence. Beaumont detectives interviewed colleagues, ex-boyfriends, neighbors, dozens of leads. But nothing stuck. In 1997, the case slowed. A victim's family carried grief into each new year. Her parents passed away, never seeing justice. For the town of Beaumont, the Edwards murder became a whispered memory, an unsolved question that time seemed to bury. What no one realized, tucked inside a sealed vault, lay a degradation-resistant sample that would become the key, long after the technology to use it had been invented. By the 2010s, forensic science transformed criminal justice. The mapping of the human genome, consumer DNA databases, and breakthroughs in STR and SNP sequencing meant tiny biological traces could now reveal family trees, even when the suspect was not in CODIS. Cold case units across the country began reopening unsolved files. In Texas, Othram, a cutting-edge DNA sequencing lab, worked with Beaumont detectives to revisit the Mary Catherine Edwards case. The evidence preserved back in 1995, which had yielded nothing definitive at the time, suddenly had the potential to trace a lineage. From a tiny DNA fragment, genealogists built a family web. Relatives 3 or 4 generations removed appeared as faint genetic connections. By following public records, marriages, births, obituaries, they traced those connections back toward one name that fit in the right time, place, and profile: Clayton Bernard Foreman. Foreman wasn't on police radar in 1995, but new evidence painted another story. He had a history of sexual violence, including crimes against women he knew from social circles. What investigators once overlooked, a detail blurred in time, now aligned perfectly with Edwards' murder scene. Detectives surveilled Foreman quietly. They retrieved discarded items to confirm DNA. The match was undeniable. In 2021, more than 25 years after Mary Catherine's death, police finally placed Foreman in custody. For Edwards' cousins, nieces, and surviving family, that phone call was surreal. A name attached. After decades of silence, justice was finally in motion. At trial, prosecutors walked jurors through the nightmare. State-of-the-art DNA evidence tied Foreman to the crime scene. Experts testified about the evolution of forensic genealogy. The defense argued reliability, privacy, and circumstantial connections. But the jury was convinced. In 2024, nearly 3 decades after Mary Catherine's murder, the verdict came: guilty of capital murder. Foreman received life in prison without parole. For the family, it was bittersweet. Justice, but without Mary Catherine here to see it. This case underscores the revolution in crime solving. From the Golden State Killer to small-town Texas cold cases, genetic genealogy is reshaping justice. Critics warn of privacy risks, supporters call it overdue accountability. For the Beaumont police, the Edwards case proved one truth: sometimes the future can solve the past. For her former students, now grown adults, the name Mary Catherine Edwards doesn't mean a victim. It means the teacher who pushed them to dream bigger. For the community, closure after 30 years meant the end of whispers and the return of trust. But her story also serves as a reminder: for every case solved, there are countless others still waiting in dusty files. The murder of Mary Catherine Edwards took nearly 30 years to solve. But thanks to persistence, new science, and the dedication of investigators, her story now has an ending. An ending written not by silence, but by justice. If you have information on unsolved cases, contact your local cold case unit. Share stories. Keep memories alive. Because behind every unsolved file, there is a family waiting.